get justice for all.
Call the meeting to order. Everyone present. First up on the agenda, Sean Snyder, Emergency Management, Dr. Kevin Locke, and Dr. Tanner.
Well, I thought I'd go, well, first of all, good morning, supervisors. Hope you had a good weekend. I thought I'd start your morning off with an upbeat topic right away to start your Monday off. But I'm Sean. You guys know me. I want to let these two distinguished people introduce themselves here.
Kevin Locke, I've been the county medical examiner for many years.
Honestly, the reason for this plan is because of these two fine people. They helped tremendously push this through, and I think we have a very good, I don't want to call it a simple plan, but it's a very good plan. I think when Dr. Locke and I first started this, it was many, many pages, and we got it down to something that works for Winneshiek County. The reason for you guys, it's more of we want to let you guys know about this plan because as with any disaster here in Winneshiek County, you guys are the piece that starts the disaster declaration. Excuse me, the disaster declaration piece. Usually, how it works is I go through chairman of the board, sign off on a disaster declaration. The mass fatality plan in itself differs from a mass casualty plan as kind of how it's implied. The mass fatality, most of the time, the people involved are fatalities. Where mass casualty, there could be some fatalities and there could be some injured. In its simplest form, anything that overruns our resource capability constitutes an issue here in Winneshiek County. So I know maybe one of your questions may be, and I'll defer to these two fine people, but one of your questions may be, when does this plan get instituted? If it's a Tuesday at noon, you know, depending on the amount of resources we have here in Winneshiek County, that may be different than a Friday or a Saturday versus the amount of resources we have in Winneshiek County as well. So it's going to be very fluid. Doctors, do you have anything you want to jump in? And
Yeah, it will also depend on the number of fatalities that we'd have at the time. In the scenario you pick, there clearly could be a combination mass casualty, mass fatality event. And we're limited resources in a rural area. I mean, all four of our death investigators are paramedics. So if there's a mass casualty event, obviously the living get the attention first. And so we may just be short, and our response will depend on how many there are.
so one of the things with the plans, instead of coming to the board or working through the commission and saying we need to buy XYZ resources, we were able to form partnerships or memorandums of understandings with local agencies near us that have the resources that we may need in the event of a mass fatality. So that is one aspect of this plan. We kind of thought outside the box. Instead of us maintaining and having the initial costs for this stuff, how can we partner? And that was one of the pieces of this plan. What kind of questions you guys may have? Some of it may not be able to get into in great detail, but we'll certainly try our best to answer.
Are you looking at rented refrigerator trucks or partnering with neighbor communities in this event?
Yes, as I mentioned, so we have MOUs in place with like the Alameda County Medical Examiner's Office. They have a portable morgue unit. The word portable is a little misleading. It doesn't really leave that area, but they do have that capability. I do have an agreement with a company in the southern part of Winneshiek County as well for a refrigerated semi-trailer should we need it. And that's really what comes back to you guys as well, because I can't guarantee that that privately owned refrigerated truck, should we need it, is going to, is that person going to want that back after having something like this? So like with everything disaster related, there's costs involved, and that's why you guys need to be involved with this process.
That'd be a question we could ask our insurance company too, that, if this ever happened and we ruin the refrigerator truck, that would our insurance cover the purchase of that or covering it? I don't know if it's in our insurance right now or not.
That's a great question.
I've not been through a mass fatality event, but every conference I've gone to that talks about them says when you get it from a private entity, they don't want it back. You're gonna buy it from
Right,
them.
right.
So that's why it's nice to have. We also have the option of the state medical examiner's office has refrigeration capacity. Lake County has no capacity for refrigeration bodies. So.
Probably our biggest resource at our disposal is Johnson County Emergency Management as well. They have literally 2 different semi-trailers outfitted currently for this type of situation. Through emergency management, we have what's called an IMAC. It's literally a phone call, and it's just a matter of time getting the resources up here, assuming they're not being used by another county. So
So that's through the entire state agreement with.
yes, yeah.
Do you have the power to commandeer resources in an emergency?
When you say commandeer resources, what kind of?
Go and say somebody has a truck, we're taking this over.
No.
That's what happens in the movies.
Yeah. I don't believe,
In an
Sean,
emergency situation, somebody says, we're taking these resources.
if you have a business card, I can introduce myself as Mark Faldet.
That's right.
But no, I do not have that capability. That's why it's important to have the partnerships beforehand.
Historically, Sean, when was the last time in the state that we had a similar type of event?
Sioux City.
Yeah, Sioux City.
Sioux City plane crash, 1989.
You know, we have fatalities here in Winneshiek County all the time, and the issue that we could potentially run into, probably more so than an airplane, would be, let's say, a Suburban carrying 6 or 8 people. Is that technically a mass casualty, mass fatality event?
Yeah, but I think of Surfside condo in Miami in 2021 that collapsed, 98. So think about what happened in Davenport just recently, and Joplin, a tornado. They happened. That was a mass fatality event, and it wiped out their EMS capability at the same time.
That's probably our biggest worry is, we have a fantastic group of emergency responders, but they all wear multiple hats. So they're going to ask them to do this plus this now. It's just a lot on the system.
You need an action by the board to accept this, or if it's something the commission is done with and they just kind of have to know about it, or what's the?
I think the commission will obviously accept this as well, but I think it's good to have this for historical purposes through your board as well for documentation. If you guys want any other questions, then yes, I'd like to see it approved by you guys.
I move to approve the mass fatality plan put forth by emergency management and.
Second it.
A motion and a second to adopt the mass fatality plan. Is there any further discussion? If none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you all very much.
One sidebar question, while we still have Doctor here as a medical examiner. At one of our recent 6-county meetings, the question came up about the cost of autopsies and when is an autopsy required?
Yeah, broad question. And actually, even if you expand it out further, it's getting tougher and tougher. The Code of Iowa says every county has to have a medical examiner. It's difficult nowadays to get that. Everybody's so busy. And I'm fortunate that we got the market. But so I'm actually meeting with the state medical examiner this week about, are they going to conceptually think about changing how we do that? With that in mind, an autopsy is mandatory in a few cases, a work death, any kind of violent death. But in others, it's strongly encouraged. So you just have to, it's kind of a game day decision on when you do an autopsy or not.
So they find somebody in their apartment that's been dead for several days. Is that required to do an autopsy?
It depends. If in our investigation, because any unexpected death like that is going to lead to an investigation, and if that can show that there's nothing, no concerns of violent or a death that affects the public interest in other ways, and you can show that there was likely a natural cause of death, then we stop the investigation there. We don't proceed with the internal investigation.
Yeah, it's truly case by case for Dr. Locke and his team.
Yeah, because the counties were, as everyone is being pinched with budgets, some of the counties or medical transport to send off the bodies and pick it up and everything else was becoming a real problem at home to share facilities.
Everyone envies our system we have set up, yeah.
Well, I mean, I wish it wasn't that way. There was a transport service, and so them a fair amount. Funeral homes would oftentimes transport as well, and then charge the county for that, not the family, because it's the county that's ordering the autopsy. That transport service suddenly was gone, just immediately. And I called all the surrounding counties. Can we try to set this up? Can we buy those? Can we do that? And just got no response. And so I explained that to Ben, and the next thing I know, the county bought us a van. Thank you very much. So now at least we can transport our bodies. It's not used frequently.
They're all wanting to borrow.
Well, and I don't like having ownership of it, to be honest. I shouldn't say ownership, but I mean, scheduling the maintenance and doing all the stuff. So if there was a way the county wanted to take it over and utilize it for other counties and set up some sort of transport system, that'd be great. I tried to do that, but it just didn't pan out. So it seemed like a waste of resources. We were able to get cots and get the boards and all that to roll them in on, and carpet to protect it. And so it's a pretty nice setup.
It's really, many counties are envious of what has been done.
Well, you guys did it. So, yeah, you guys did it.
Thank you. That clarifies a lot.
I'm
Thank you
open
so
for
much.
questions anytime, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Go on the consent agenda.
Minutes and claim, and see, I don't think I have anything else. I'll put it check quick. Yeah, just the minutes and the claims.
I'd move to approve the consent agenda.
Second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Further discussion? None, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Sign. Motion carries unanimous.
Big stack of minutes. It's like a sheet of paper.
Brendan, might as well come up and get comfortable with a couple of minutes.
How do you guys work with those streets in front of you?
Please,
Oh.
them.
The packages are sealed there, so it's good.
That's a good idea.
But there's a sidebar question. People have asked about the appointments for driver's licenses and so forth. Is that still necessary to continue with that? Because some of them have a hard time trying to get in, especially with the courthouse hours and so forth.
Well, with courthouse hours, that wouldn't change anything whether we had appointments or not, because, our courthouse hours are the same as our appointments. Since the state started doing appointments, and that's not going to change. And people really, really like that, because instead of being there all day, you have an appointment. And that, of course, had to trickle down to all the counties. Actually, more people like it than not, just because right now you can, like everybody that's called today, and it's kind of nice because my father-in-law passed away, so I need to leave this afternoon, and I have an employee that has a sick child today. So So now we know that, and so we can compensate for that with knowing that, okay, we can't have all these people at this one time, which works really good. But most of the time, we can still get people in the same day, normally always the next day. And we're gonna, our neighboring counties, they have their drives, people call us and want to drive, and we can get that in easily the next day or the day after for drives. And they call us because some of the neighboring counties are a month out. So we're still way ahead. And of course, we can't do CDLs out at the site anymore, but we still do all the testing and everything for that.
So are you gonna continue that into next year or send it off to Mason City?
We had to discontinue it because there was they had set up new, the whole course out there was going to be brand new, and the training on it was all new. And the DOT called us and said, well, okay, we're not going to make you stop, but since Mason City, nobody comes here anymore because they have to go to Mason City anyway to get that first part of the training done. So then they just do it all in a package and they do all the drive out there. So we had 3 appointments last year, and so it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So because of that new law, and it's too bad because, it was working out good for us, but there was no reason to have any.
You can't keep anybody certified with 3 a year.
No, because we have 2 people and you have to have 10 a year to certify. And El McKee thought they were going to try it, but they had no idea how they were going to get 10 people to certify.
What do you got on the budget?
I'm pretty boring. Not a whole lot of things. On the first page, we get into the motor vehicle, did have to go up on when it says stationary and forms, that's our envelopes, mostly our envelopes. And that, of course, that's going up. So I went up because of the envelopes going up. And next line where it says magazines and books, of course, I don't have any magazine subscriptions or anything, but when it says books with that, for us, that line is our motor vehicle training books and our PEC books that have every state's laws, and we have to have that because every state has different laws, and someone comes in with an out-of-state title, we need to, and has questions on it, we need to those books, and they have gone way up. So I did go up a couple $100 on those just to have that. And of course, every year, their states update, so we have to have updated books. The big increase is the next one, data processing supplies, and that is our motor vehicle registration bills that go out. They go out every month. Everybody gets their bills for that. And the postage has gone up dramatically. This last year, I'm gonna be over budget on it because I wasn't anticipating the huge, and so I actually had to go up 3,000 on that, and I'm crossing my fingers that covers it. So otherwise, everything's the same on that page. Next page, and then you get into page 3, and that's the treasury management service. Same thing, the envelopes. I went up a little bit on that, and otherwise everything's the same. Office cell phone, I just went up $100 just to hopefully that will catch the office cell phone, which we don't use that for us per se, but if somebody comes in and they have a bill of sale and it's on their phone, what we have them do instead of them trying to put it on our personal phone, we just have them text it to the office phone, and then from there we can print it out. And that way nobody needs to know our numbers. So that works out. Really good. So the big one is on page 4, and there again, that is because of postage. Outsourcing, this is our tax statements that get printed every July, end of July. And that's 22,000 statements, and so we can't do it in-house. And and I went over budget on that because I'm not anticipating the huge postage. Now, there's 3 companies that really try to compete to get this in Iowa for doing. So as far as their labor and such, you know, they are really competing, but there's nothing that can be done about the postage part that they have to. And so I had to go up 2,500 on that because of the.
Who is your budget or which budget, Ben, will be coming, the postage that we have to send out?
It's Ben's.
Yours, okay.
So then, when we get into the revenue, went up some on the auto registration fees. It'd be nice if we, you know, as far as motor vehicle, we did 700,000 more in business this year, but that doesn't come to the county and the state, it still hasn't gone through legislation of getting us more of that, which that's gone now. It's been since before COVID that they've been trying to get the counties more. And it's sad that most of this goes directly to the state and not to the county, but it's the legislation for some of the items that go to the state, the fees haven't changed since the late 80s. And of course, everything else has gone way up. So hopefully they will get that.
It's a flat amount every time they do a title or collect tax or do a security interest for bank, they get a certain dollar of the tax. So they get whatever it is, $3.50 per title or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then the state gets the rest. So even as things go up,
I think we get
they don't get any more.
I think we get $1.50 per title. It'd be
Okay.
nice to-
But
So
and that doesn't-
anyway.
But that doesn't include the online, the state just keeps it?
The online is the same way. Any title that we do, we get the same fee because we still have to process the online titles, even though the dealer has done the paperwork, it still has to come to us. We have to accept it or send it back. And we still have to.
When someone does a license renewal online, the
They
fees,
still do it.
you still have to do it all.
Yeah, we still, and that comes online. It's just that they're not coming into the office. They're paying it online, but we still have to process it. We still have to print out the registrations and
So
mail
at
them.
least the state is reimbursing something.
Yeah. Registrations, that's where we get 4%, and that's where at least, and like now, eventually, there's going to be, well, right now, there's contiguous counties as far as doing titles, but eventually it's going to be cross-county, over the whole state of Iowa, where you could go to Des Moines and do a title in Winneshiek County right now. And that's not going to make a big effect because not that many people are going to go out of county to do a title. But the registrations, that will never be cross-county because that is where the counties make the money, is on the registrations. So anyway, so there, pretty much everything is about the same on there. The motor vehicle mailing fees, now that is postage. There again, right now, to send out plates, if someone wants to renew through the mail, it costs them $3 for us to send out the plates. That's right on their bill. That, as of January 1st, has changed to $5. And I didn't go up much though on the revenue on that because I'm thinking that a lot of people are not going to do it through the mail when they see it's $5. They'll probably come in. So we'll see. So I'm being very cautious on raising that much just for the fact that I don't feel that people are going to want to pay $5 to send out, especially if they have 10 new plates or such. So anyway, so I'll know more next year on that, how this postage has affected our revenue. Otherwise, and then interest, what we did this year is, this is one of those things where it was always that way. And I had 2 line items for interest, and me and Ben kind of talked about it, and we're just gonna make it one. And so, and there again too, I've been kind of watching that, and you know, the middle of the year, interest rates will start going down. I mean, it shouldn't be a whole lot. So there again too, I'm not gonna go crazy over that, but I still am going to put a revenue of $275,000 on that. I'm sure it's gonna be more, but instead of saying it's more and not getting that, we're better off doing that. much better than a couple years ago, and I think we maybe had 30,000 or so at their office.
There are some positives.
There are positives, and I have been working really hard on getting the best bang for our buck on the income. So,
Thank you.
Just a side question, kind of going back to what we were talking about before. Driver's licenses, can anyone in your office do driver's licenses?
we all process driver's license, yeah.
And then have you considered being open alternate hours? When people not necessarily work hours, people come on a weekend.
We
to do
haven't,
that?
we haven't really had any problem with that for the fact that people can do driver's license online unless they're a certain age. They can, once they do it online, the next time they do have to come in as far as getting their vision checked. But then the next time after that, they can do it online again. So we haven't had a problem with that. And the state stations are open Saturdays. And
Where's the nearest one?
so the state stations would be Mason City, Dubuque, Waterloo, and any,
But they're closed on
Right.
like Tuesdays or something. then.
they're closed on Mondays. Yeah.
Mondays.
My concern is that some people work in jobs where they work
Mhm.
Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, have a half hour and they can't drive up here, get back, so they take vacation.
Well, and driver's license too does not have to be in this county.
Well, it doesn't
And-
matter. I mean, they're gonna have probably take vacation to get,
I tell you what, if that was a problem, I would probably look into that, but I don't have people saying, I can't get there, I can't get there. We just don't have that. And so, and like I said, now that the state has made online, driver's license available, they do that, but we just don't have a problem with people being able, it'd be kind of like going to the doctor's office. I mean, everybody works, but they make time to do that. So, and there again too, and people know that you have 30 days before and 60 days after. And so you have 90 days where you can work around that. And so, you know, usually within the 90 days, people can find a time to come in. We start as early as 8:15. We're there at 3:30 doing them just to, and it's just not a problem that people have called saying, I can't get in.
but they don't have an option.
We don't have problem. So, you know, I like I said, if I have people honest, I just can't do this. But that just doesn't happen. We work with everybody to make sure that we can get in, or they know the availability of where, you know, if they're working in another part of the state, it's like, oh, well, you can go here and here, and we'll look up the times for them and have them.
And appointments actually help with that because they know when they come in, they can
They
get
can get
it
in.
right away and not have to wait in line.
Absolutely, absolutely. So there is no waiting in line. So,
Right. Thank you, Brenda.
you are welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
In some other states, you can wait for hours.
Next on the
Where's
agenda,
Do that. You know where it is.
Christopher Mick.
So
I
then-
know I told you,
You're all good.
Board of Health appointment.
So I just wanted to take the time to start out and say that I appreciate you guys meeting with me this morning. I did bring, I know I should have got this in advance, but I did bring some supporting documentation to keep me on track with what I'm gonna talk about, so I can hand these out if you want to pass those around. So it's from my understanding that I was made aware after last Monday's meeting, when you guys all unanimously voted me on the Board of Health. There may have been a due process, you know, that wasn't followed, which I understand that due process should be followed. I apologize, I didn't hand enough out. However, my frustration, I'm a little frustrated just in a sense because I know how hard it is to fill board and commission seats, whether it be on the county or the city level. So I'll go into a few supporting documents here. So I know the first one is an article from Deborah News in regards to the deadline for board and commissions applications, which was stated that December 8th was the deadline, which I know you publicly have to give notice. I know from my understanding at the last meeting, I was the only applicant that had applied by that deadline. So I know due process would be that you would indeed send it back through, to Kristen, and then they would go through the Board of Health, and then they would vet the candidates and present. And regardless, and is that I would be the only applicant to go through that process again and come back. So I know also, it just so happened when you guys had, appointed me last Monday, that the following Tuesday was actually a Board of Health meeting. We meet once a month. So I was able to be in attendance for that. And it was really insightful just to see how the process worked out. I know it was a very collaborative meeting that was there. There was some opportunities presented on the table in regards to, I know the seat that I got appointed to was for Mr. Cronin, which I know they want that representation on the Board of Health, which I agree is a value to have that school aspect. I know he was open to even just being a liaison on the board and me taking that seat. I know another option was presented was that to have an ad hoc person on the board, which is a non-sitting board member, like non-voting. And I know a few other things were covered. I know some confusion points that were in that meeting was with Mr. Cronin being appointed. When he was appointed for the remainder of Mr. Lane's term, which I provided the board minutes from June 13th of 2022, which states that he was appointed for the remainder of the term. I know there was some confusion at that point. The reason I included the chapter 137, which I assume is the most recent of the Iowa Code in regards to the Board of Health, is I had some conversations with some family members that are providers and also other individuals that have been on county boards of health in other counties. And when I went to the meeting last Tuesday for Board of Health, some resolutions were provided, like I had said, whether it be Mr. Cronin being, that liaison for the school, just being there, or that ad hoc position for me. I know I had a conversation with Kristen after I was notified of some of the stuff that went on last week, and it was all positive things. And I know something else that was brought up at the Board of Health meeting. I highlighted something on should be the second page here, is that from my understanding, that when I was at that meeting, there could only be 5 members on the board. But based on what it says here, just with my conversations with other individuals that have been on boards of health, not necessarily in this county, and especially for larger counties, that it says at least 5, and one of those has to be a medical provider, whether it be a physician, an MP, or a PA. So regardless, I agree at the end of the day, whatever you guys' decision is, I'll stand by that. I just know that it's very hard to find appointments to these boards and commissions, and I'm actively wanting to serve, at the county level, and that's why I initially applied. And I do agree that, Mr. Cronin should be there, just in the sense that we do need a valid asset in regards to the school. But the only reason I highlighted this section in the code was because if he wants to be there, there can be, from my understanding of this, and I may be mistaken because I'm no, expert on the Iowa Code, but just saying that this could be another option with my research that I did this weekend and conversations I've had. And I just want you to know, again, I'll reiterate, at the end of the day, I've gotten involved because I want to serve my community and on a greater level as well. And I brought these supporting documents because I was doing a lot of research over the weekend, and I just wanted all of the things on the table. And again, I just wanted to say, appreciate you for taking the time to meet with me this morning. And like I said, if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to reach out. But regardless of what your decision is, I know that's next on the agenda. So unless you guys have any questions or concerns, that's all I have to say. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, no,
Thank you for your diligence in researching that.
thank you guys.
Krista is here.
if she wants to say anything.
Krista, do you have any input?
It's best really to keep an odd number on a board in case there is a tie, okay? Because I don't get to vote. And so I can't break a tie. He is correct in the fact that the code does say at least 5 members. Board of Health took a look at all of that information when they were going through their development of a vetting tool and their position statements. And so they said that they wanted to still keep it at 5 members. It's too hard to get a quorum if you have too many more. Okay. Ultimately, this is a board of supervisor position. I talked with the assistant county attorney who shared this with the county attorney. And the last I heard was that it's a board of supervisor determination.
So remind me, what is the issue here? Is that Tim Cronin wants to now stay on the board?
So the issue is there is a difference in the dates. So Ben has records of filling a vacancy with this end date, and I have record of, and the Board of Health just said this is a new 3-year term, knowing that Mr. Lane had left. And so there's a difference in the dates. That's what it amounts to.
So Mr. Cronin didn't know that his term was
Term was
up,
up.
is the deal.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
So he thought he was still had another year and a half. or
Till year and
whatever.
a half till his term
And
was up,
that's
because he
not
thought it
what-
was a 3-year running term.
That's why you didn't fill out.
That's why he didn't fill out an application.
Have you ever had a tied vote or close to a tie or any controversial vote on the Board of Health?
You're not gonna have that one.
You're gonna have a tie vote. if
No,
it's 5
I'm asking,
members.
has there ever been a controversial decision that the Board of Health had to come to?
And the boards are either 3, 5, 7, or 9. I mean, you put an odd number just for that simple fact. So,
Have we moved on to that?
Well, I was just gonna say, we'll just move right into this. Next up are a couple miscellaneous items. Appointment to the board, boards and commissions, including Board of Health.
when us at the boards would recommend him, I mean, that's who we'd have recommended to be on, since we got veterinarian, hospitals, Luther, supervisors, and then school districts. So, I mean, he's very informative on what, we got all our bases covered in the county that way.
So the one that did the application, Coney didn't know he had to apply.
No, he didn't.
No,
He
I'm
had
not
no idea.
arguing.
No.
And then Christopher submitted one by the deadline. Are we looking at Christopher as an ad hoc member, non-voting ad hoc member to your board? And then Cronin serving out his current term?
It would
Is
be
that
a
what
new-
we're talking
no,
about?
It would be a new term. It needs to be a new term. Because that one is up at the end of this year.
But he didn't know.
He didn't know. He
No,
thought he had
no
a year and
idea.
a half
He thought
left.
he was looking for a year and a half. We go through the applications and we give our recommendation to the board here, and we,
Seems like a simple
I mean,
misunderstanding.
it was just a simple, it was just,
Who notifies people their term is gonna be up?
But we usually Krista went for the Board of Health, only she had it that it was the 3 years, so she didn't notify him until I told her that, oh, by the way, Monday afternoon or Tuesday, I said the board appointed reappointed Mark and appointed Christopher, and she's like, what? What's going on? She didn't know there was another one up. So I went back and double checked the minutes to make sure my records were right, and that's when we got it.
yeah, it was just a misunderstanding, yeah. Pointing finger at nobody, it's just one of them things that happened, and things happen. I mean, nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect.
No, and I'm not saying anybody's pointing a
And
finger.
things are- I mean, it just happened. It's one of them things that happened, and we can't correct it.
My question remains, are we talking about appointing an ad hoc member, Krista? Because didn't I see something about that in an email?
That, what
It
I'm
was,
trying
it
to
was
do is,
discussed, but we never,
right, that was up for discussion, is trying to kind of make peace and try to have everybody save a little face,
Right.
right? the other issue, and this is probably the bigger issue, is that the board due process was totally ignored. Now we understand.
That was my fault, because
We know this is a new part of this. Okay, we did this in February of 22 to make sure that we had a game say to make sure that we were covering all of the different populations throughout the county, right? And so we understand that's new. There's so many different policies and procedures that we have to try to keep straight, that it's easy to forget some of those, right? I think that probably frosts the Board of Health the most right now. Okay, comments were made that they really feel a little jaded. That process was forgotten.
What were the comments made?
They're very frustrated. They expressed frustration that they had worked a lot of time and a lot of effort in putting that process into place, and that it was ignored.
I was there as well, so I can attest to that.
So my question is still, if I'm remembering my email wrong, correct me, but I thought I saw a conversation, an email about a possibility of Cronin still being the voting member because he's serving out, continuing his term, and that Christopher, because of his interest and his background in health, could be an ad hoc member who's willing to be a volunteer for our community. And then maybe he could someday be appointed to a board position with that knowledge. Is that what we were getting at in the email?
That was before the Board of Health
Yeah.
meetings discussion.
It was brought up, but then we decided bring it to the Board of Health for reappoint, or, take a look at it.
Did the,
We didn't decide on it. It was a discussion is all. That.
right, I'm just trying to get
Yeah.
to the bottom.
It was just a discussion. It was not voted on or nothing.
So does
It was just a possibility if, yeah.
So
But that's
does the Board of
before we-
Health decide on whether or not you want an ad hoc member?
Yeah,
Right.
that'd be the health boards, not the Board of Health, or not our
This board,
decision. That would be
right.
the Board of Health's decision whether we want to do that.
And am I correct? We do not have a city board of health. We only have a county board of health.
County Board of Health, yep.
So in order to right this ship, we should probably move forward with removing Christopher from the Board of Health and adding Tim back onto it.
How would that?
So my frustration is you would probably have to go through the process again of him applying because you posted a public deadline. And my issue with that is, I know there was mix-ups in the dates and stuff, which I totally understand, but you also posted a public deadline that was posted on Decorum News, and I don't know what other avenue you guys use, but it was out there in the community for at least since the beginning of November.
It was published, it's a public notice in the newspaper.
Yeah.
This is maybe something we should address with Andy.
You could, if you want to make a change, you need to, at this meeting, if you decide to make a change is when you need to do it, because you need to have a motion to reconsider your action last week. So bring that back up and then vote it down and then make a new motion to appoint someone different. Because that would be the proper parliamentary procedure to do that. If you skip a meeting, then you can't do a motion to reconsider your previous action. So.
Well,
Who
we can
made the
move
motion
this
last time?
to the end of the meeting and discuss it with Andy. And before we adjourn the meeting, we could take action.
I also need, I forgot this one last week, and all the boards and commissions, reappointment of Mark Vick to the Northeast or North Iowa Response Group Board and Sean Snyder as the alternate. So I do need that one in the minutes too, when you do boards and commissions.
We're moving all of it to the end of the
We'll
meeting.
move all the miscellaneous to the end of the
Okay.
meeting. We're trying to get back on schedule here. Next up, we have Tony Phillips, Planning, Zoning and Floodplain Administrator, resolution of intent for the National Flood Insurance Program.
Good morning. Try to get you back on schedule here. I already sent you all this in the email. It's a requirement for joining the NFIP is you have to do this resolution of intent. It's up to you.
I would move on approving a resolution of intent to join that program. But I'd also like to see us do a huge effort in public education about how it works and what does it mean and everything for residents. Some form of articles or press release.
Well, we did do, I did do one press release, and, I had a little commentary after that. So.
Okay, good. So motion's on the table. I would like to move forward with that.
Second? Fails for lack of a second.
Does somebody else want to make the motion again? Have you read through the material? I mean, this is a no-brainer. We need FEMA money if there's a disaster. We need to be part of this program.
And Tony, your feeling on this?
Nobody pays me for my opinion, Mark.
Well, I'm asking you.
So if the county does not join the NFIP, come February 22nd, when the maps are finalized, there are requirements in other areas, such as banking, where people who have a mortgage on property that is in the floodplain will be required to carry the subsidized flood insurance. That insurance will not be available in the county if the county does not join the NFIP.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. For the resolution of intent for the National Flood Insurance Program, is there any further discussion?
Sounds like we're locked into it.
Yeah.
What's that?
Sounds like we're locked into the maintaining the flood insurance necessity for any banking situation that may arise. It doesn't, Tony, none of our existing maps or anything else are influenced by the adoption of this, is that correct?
So the unincorporated areas of Winneshiek County do not have an existing map. This is a brand new map. The maps that are on Beacon that people can see, that is the preliminary map that is being adopted. Okay, so officially, there is no map. Officially, February 22nd and 24th, there will be a map. That map is the one that everybody has seen on Beacon.
Did you say at one time there were like, how many structures will be included in that?
Actually, that's in that application. So
For the public's interest?
the estimates for the flood area are 26,222 acres, a population of 95 people, number of 1 to 4 family structures is 42, and the number of all other structures is approximately 105.
Are these folks aware of the impact that they may have from that?
I have no idea.
Is it true that we have to adopt this in order to get FEMA money in the flood fund?
So if the county does not join the NFIP, damages, if there is a flood, damages that are within the floodplain would not be eligible for FEMA money. Damages outside the floodplain could still be eligible.
So the benefit would be for the folks who have those 42 residences that are within the floodplain that would then be impacted by the option for FEMA money. Is that correct?
Yes, there would be a benefit to those folks.
In the flood in Freeport, who paid, whose money paid to buy out the houses that were removed?
I don't remember the exact proportions, but it was the largest portion was FEMA, the second largest portion was the state of Iowa, and the smallest portion was Winneshiek County.
So going forward, there would be no FEMA money to buy out those houses if they're in the floodplain.
That is my understanding, correct?
I don't remember exactly, but that program, but most FEMA programs, federal FEMA pays 75%, state pays 10, and the county comes up with 15% matching. That's how most, when we have a road project or something, or bridge, it washes out. That's how it usually gets funded.
So then the people in the floodplain, if they don't take out flood insurance, is FEMA still gonna pop up money for them then? If we don't.
So if we have, if the county adopts the NFIP, flood insurance is available. If the individual chooses not to purchase flood insurance, then if they are wiped out like everybody else. If FEMA comes up with some special program, they also could apply for funds.
So to me, it's like, well, either they have the option to buy flood insurance, or it's the same either way, they're not gonna get money. So I mean, this gives them the option to buy the insurance.
Yeah, because usually if there's a FEMA does not apply usually to the individual home situation, does it? In a flood scenario and under general terms?
I do not know the answer to that.
I just think this gives people the option
Option
to
to get
protect
flood
flood
insurance.
insurance without having also the banks.
Man, yeah, for the bank.
If they have to have it
The
for the
mandate.
bank, then they don't have the option, then, yeah. Which they won't if we don't approve this.
Sure. That's what I was getting at, the FEMA thing.
Yeah.
So we do have a motion, we do have a second. This is a resolution. Shirley,
I,
Paul,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
and I also. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you,
See
Tony.
you, Tony. Next on the agenda, me, John Deere, Freeport property discussion.
Dan, let's sign that.
Morning. Thank you for allowing some time for us to fence with you a bit. I'd like to pass out what I would like to touch base on. And that could go in the record or whatever. For the Board of Supervisors to schedule, this is my request, for the Board of Supervisors to schedule an evening meeting hearing in Freeport before January 8th to hear directly from the Freeport citizens regarding the potential sale of these parcels of the county property. This will enable those who are not able to attend regular scheduled Board of Supervisors meetings on Monday mornings to participate in an issue that will most likely affect them. Venue and time is set for 7 p.m. at the Christian Life Center in Freeport on January 4th of 2024. The second request is to schedule a site visit in conjunction with the evening public hearing with those interested and include a watershed scientist who is familiar with the flooding history of Freeport. Larry Weber with the Iowa Flood Center is available for consultation at no charge. And I put in a couple other items. Rotocast came to the board to construct a solar field. There is no mention of a solar field in the resolution 24-27. Number 4, there are no restrictions on unsafe storage of chemicals such as diisocyanates that is included in the EPA TRI Explorer Facility Profile Report for Iowa Rotocast Plastics and Molar Site. So I've got the EPA rating here. I'm not suggesting that Rotocast is violating by any means. All I'm doing is from my experience with working with dangerous chemicals in the paper making field as I was a quality assurance technician and would work with those materials that there's a toluene connection with that chemical. And there's other factories down in that same area that he met and are recorded in the EPA. You can look them up on the internet. And so if perchance they were the ones that acquired the parcels, they might likely be able to put in a storage unit because a lot of those things should be contained away from the worker force. Anyway, that's why I included that information. So I guess that's about, unless you have questions, that's all I have to say. And John has a part to talk to also.
Kevin, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
On the isocyanates, does the EPA come in and monitor or inspect their facility for compliance on those kinds of chemicals?
I'm not 100% sure, but the way I read it on the internet is that it's kind of a self-monitoring situation and they fall within the limits. I think it was 500 pounds emissions per year. So, you know, those factories have enlarged a lot since the infancy of the industrial site. So, you know, they've tried to make more product and they obviously would need more components to be put into making those products. And not all of those are really safe. Maybe the end product is safe, but the construction of those products utilize things that are dangerous to the public.
It's interesting if the waste are recycling, we have an actual structure for hazardous waste.
Right.
That's sealed and contained.
Yeah, many years ago when I worked in paper mills, we would make kits and they were done by technicians as myself, and we would dispense out of these big 5-gallon or 50-gallon drums and put, it was a solution that would be inserted silicone, and then it would make the silicone very fluid so it could lay down on a paper sheet within, you know, micrograms and millimeters. And later in the years after I left there, they actually made a containment center that was, you had to have a suit on to go in there and do the work. You know, it was highly protective. There was several block radius around the area when I worked there for evacuation if there was a big spill. And of course, I'm not comparing rotocast, but if you include all of these different facilities and their emissions and the materials that they may have that are hazardous to the public, there might be more of a problem there. I'm just saying there could be. You'd have to have that inspected to figure out. So I'll let John go ahead. Okay.
Oh, there should, well, before John, excuse me,
Yeah.
on point 3 that you bring up, Kevin, in an offer, the RFP, there is no restriction as to what could go on the property as far as something that's not in the zoning. So as far as a recommendation of a solar field, they simply approached to purchase the property, suggesting that would be the use that they would use it for clarification. So there was no specification that the property was going to be sold for a solar field per se. Is that what you're referring to in point 3?
Well, it kind of brings up the issue of why is the county wanting to sell it? When you look at the resolution, it says basically that whereas the real estate is no longer needed for a county purpose. And I think if you got the public impact or public say and examine what DNR involvement is and a lot of other things, you'll find that this property is not a piece of ground that the county doesn't need. Us people that own it. So I can kind of understand that Rotocast may want to put a solar field in there and maybe that's, environmentally benign. And maybe a good move for the factory and it won't hurt really that much for the public to be, inclusive in that. But, this resolution leaves it wide open. They could put a containment center or solvents, or there could be all kinds of different variables there of what could go into that piece of ground. I know that, sir, you mentioned that there's a portion of it that is higher ground. It's not inclusive in the floodplain map. That hasn't been ratified yet. But, the board went ahead anyway and said, well, we're going to sell it under the assumption that that floodplain is where it's going to be, and most likely it might. But that's not to say that anybody that buys it, even for $1, what if Rotocast says, hey, maybe we just don't want to do this, and somebody else offers $1 and nobody competes with them, they got it.
No, they don't. That's not the case.
Where's the minimum bid in the real resolution?
It's if we accept the bids.
If you accept them. But you would think that, in the protection financially of the county land, that it should be reiterated in this resolution, that there's a sum of money that you expect to have for it. Otherwise, it's not a very easily competitive bid. Usually you have a starting point. I guess I can't really speak to all of those details, but that's what I'm indicating to you.
Thank you.
Hopefully I answered your question. John can go.
Well, let me first say that I sympathize with your budget concerns. Let me also say, once again, the blame for this situation rests squarely with the majority party in the state legislature. For decades, both parties were guilty of starving county governments from the funds they needed to simply maintain their road and bridge infrastructure. The present majority has added insult to injury by further restricting county and local government's ability to raise needed revenues. I preface my letter with this observation to make it very clear that our county's budget woes are not due to negligence by either county government departments or past boards of supervisors. So, concerns I share with many of your constituents. Your rush to sell county land in Freeport seems unnecessarily hasty. You have made little to no effort to gather or address constituent concerns, nor have you given any specific justifications for the sale, such as how you plan to use the revenue from the sale and what future tax revenue from the property might be. Can you truly say that you have thoroughly anticipated every possible future county use for the property? To many people, the property may be serving its best possible use right now. Kreitzer demonstrated foresight by planting 3 different seed mixtures to perfectly match the 3 distinct soil types in order to provide a significant seed cost savings for the county. Now, I agree, most significant flood reduction measures are done in watershed uplands. But the plant communities on these floodplain properties do provide significant and measurable benefits by slowing, absorbing, and filtering floodwaters. On a different county land parcel on the uplands of that same watershed, also planted to natives, the board sought to return it to row crop production. Had they given any thought to the resulting increase in runoff? Some people feel that the ruling majority is trying to erase every part of the IRBM out of sheer vindictiveness. I hope that is not the case. But it is alarming how evidence presented in support of that program by other counties, by Corey Meyer and Lee Bierke, certainly people who are knowledgeable, and by a large portion of the public was not only ignored, but scorned. Past boards of supervisors who saw the benefits of the program, including the board that gave it careful final scrutiny, were likewise ignored. I'm currently reading a best-selling book titled 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. One of my favorite chapters is titled Humility. History should teach us humility. Mark Twain said, "It ain't always what you don't know that will hurt you, but what you know for sure that just ain't so." Oscar Wilde spoke about those who know the price of everything and the value of nothing. Democracy is strongest and makes its best decisions when the public is engaged in a careful and deliberative process. Process matters. And I want to thank Pastor Doug Bryce with the Christian Life Center in Freeport for making his facility available for a meeting between you folks and the public. And I would really recommend that you do it. I guess my own experience on the board, I always thought that any difficult decisions, that there was wisdom in engaging the public as much as we could. And I think it did a pretty decent job of crafting solutions that benefited from public input. So thank you for your time. And again, I sympathize, what your position is not an easy one. Thank you very much.
Mr. Langrick, would you entertain to have a meeting with us down Freeport?
I guess that is a board decision.
Board. Well, you're our representative in our district.
I have one out of the board of 5.
Is that a Thursday?
It's a Thursday.
Yes.
I would be willing to attend a meeting like that if you need a motion to vote on it.
When you don't have it up on the agenda.
You may have to reschedule it for a vote next month or next week.
Second.
We won't have time because this is Thursday and
The
we don't
second
meet
is our next
in between.
On January 2nd, you can decide if you are going to have it or not. I will
That's
have
soon
to
enough?
post it
Right.
at least 24 hours ahead of time. So if 3 or
We
more
can
of you are
decide
going.
on the second
Yeah, we do that. We can put on,
the agenda.
put on the agenda for the second.
I will be going either way.
It would be, well, if we got 3 supervisors, that would be a legitimate quorum.
You have it secured already?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, my wife secured it for us.
All right, we'll discuss that on the second.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good Christmas.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, Julie Fischer, decision-making process for board.
Thank you for giving me this time, and I'd just like to say right away that I've been very grateful for being able to attend these meetings. It's given me appreciation for how many difficult decisions you have to make, and I appreciate your concern and consideration of all these problems. We're just a small place, 20,000 residents in our county, but a lot of things come up that need our attention, so thank you. I just have a couple of issues to bring for you. I'm concerned about democratic process and public meeting laws. And last week, I went away rather confused because when I left here on December 4th, Andy had just reiterated instructions given to him for drawing up the resolution on the Freeport land. And I was certain that at that time he included in his recap of the discussion the additional restriction that Shirley mentioned for parcel A, that being to allow only structures on pedestals so that drainage would not be obstructed in rain events. However, last week, I read the resolution and that restriction had been taken off. So I wondered what had happened in the meantime, how that got erased from the resolution when it seemed like that was in there. So I went back to the video of December 4th meeting, listened to it again, and I do believe that that was one of the instructions that Andy stated was to be in there. So I just wanted to know how that got changed. And if you could explain that to me, I would appreciate it. Because it wasn't publicly acknowledged.
There were other changes added to it also.
In the meantime, between meetings,
Draft, during the draft that Andy presented,
which draft are you meaning?
Andy's draft back to the board of what he was presenting at the next meeting.
Okay, so he did a draft, sent it out to everybody, to all of you in the
That's
meantime
standard-
before
that's standard-
December
That's
11th.
standard policy, when he's writing an RFP.
Okay.
Actually, it should have been talked about on December 11th in a public meeting.
Oh, that was my feeling, that if it was a decision that was made that actually changed the resolution, it should have been openly voted on and everything. It should have been a motion voted on. That's the way things are usually done, I think.
Maybe we should ask Andy how he came to that decision. I guess that,
Some of the measements for the road set away are
Right.
that was also changed in it. There
Yeah,
are certain things that just came up, and
Yeah.
that happened to be one of them.
Yeah, I saw those changes and I thought that was really good that you got that figured out. So,
There were concern over right-of-way issues when the engineering department weighed in on the property and the size of the right-of-way on that side of the street, which was historically has been 26 feet, was not adequate for what they wanted. So they wanted to either have 33 feet or 50 feet. And the engineer decided that 33 feet would be adequate. And that there were some other issues that may have come up because they were still investigating whether or not a sewer manhole was in fact inside or outside of that. And so they were the ones that gave directions of what needed to be changed. That was not an issue to be voted on. That was a right-of-way issue that was needed.
yeah, I understood that and I thought it was really good that you figured that out and got that in there. It was just that the other issue having to do with the potential drainage problems that seemed like it just kind of got changed, which was a discussion, a big discussion of the whole board at one time. So I think those kinds of discussions, those kinds of decisions should be made up front, you know. So that was my concern there. And I would like to know how that particular thing, that change got sidelined. And the other thing, I think Kevin Lee and John really did a good job of explaining my other concern, which is I think when citizens' safety and peace of mind is concerned for their homes and their health, that we should really allow them the time that they need to express those concerns. And I'm glad to hear that there are some people that are expert in that area that can tell us about the value of that land as it is right now without any encumbrances on it. I think that's really important. I mean, maybe it's just Christmas time and everything, but it is the time when we think a lot about peace. And for me, one of the greatest values that we have is the peace amongst our community, that we, you know, listen to each other and consider all the possible happenings that could result from whatever actions we take. I don't think money is the main thing. I mean, we might not be able to make very much money on that land at all selling it, but it sure could have some consequences that would hurt us long term. So I really encourage you to listen to the people who are most involved and to gather all that information. I mean, the strength of this community and of this board is listening to all the possible things that can happen and then weighing everybody's information. None of us is able to have everything in our minds. I mean, it's really difficult to ask all these different questions. So I really appreciate it when this board looks at all those different things and actually listens to people, because that listening is what makes people feel that they are heard, that they are important, and that we're all together in this thing, because we really are. So thank you again for,
Julie,
yeah.
let me make one comment.
Yeah,
There's 5 of us on this board that represent 20,000 people in this county, and 5 of us are representing 5 different districts.
Right.
And we do communicate with the people in our districts, and I get the same feedback. And I attend, for example, 4 of the 5 incorporated city councils within my district, so that I do have a conversation with all of these different issues that affect the board, that also can affect their communities. And one of the big issues, and maybe it seems trite to think of, the budgeting and how it affects them, also affects every one of those small communities and how they spend tax money and what they do with it, how they can work together. So it's not a single thing, and it's not just one portion of our county that we're trying to take and be responsible for. We're responsible for all of these townships, all of these people, all of these diverse interests, and we hear theirs too.
yeah,
And we hear what they say is, do the best with what we have. And if we don't need it, do we need to keep it? There's certain things that we get an opportunity to decide whether or not it's as important. Previous boards have taken a different posture with that land in the past. You can go back to probably 16 years ago plus, and some other board members had a different sense of feeling on it and didn't vote to do similar things that were done by another previous board. That's part of the history of what has happened. So take that into consideration also as part of the whole process, because we have a very diverse community. We have people that are urbanized, for example, in the city of Decorah, and they're not as urbanized in Philville or Calmer or Fort Atkinson or Jackson Junction or Austin or any of these others. So they have a different view and some different needs. And we're trying to meet all of those needs besides.
Yeah.
We are a constitutional republic.
yeah, I understand that, and I really appreciate that. I just think that, whether we're urban or rural, we depend on each other in many, many different ways. And if a good can be had, a benefit to a large portion of our people, or even a small portion, I think that benefit needs to be looked at, and their safety and health concerns and their financial concerns also need to be brought into consciousness. So if people can be listened to and heard in their concerns, that's the most important thing, and the values of the land itself as it is now should also be a part of that. So
And I'm sure
thank you for your concern. Thank you for being a part of all these different groups that are involved, because I know it's a lot. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, 10:45, Andy Vandermont, county attorney. Any questions regarding the agenda and other issues? Good morning.
Welcome back.
welcome back.
Very glad to be back.
As fun as we are.
It's one of those things, it's fun to go. It's
Not fun.
seeing what's on the desk when you come back is always interesting.
You always pay the price.
That's right.
So Julie just brought up a question, maybe you can address it because you dealt with it directly. On December 4th, as a board, we did decide to give you direction on a resolution and language of a resolution, and it's in the video of that day. How did the resolution get changed from that day to what we saw on the 11th?
I was contacted on the 8th and asked to make a change to the resolution so that it did not include a restrictive covenant on parcel A, I believe. And that parcel A, that would get changed to having the same restriction that B, C, and D had. That was communicated to me. Steve sent me an email. I had a few phone calls with him. He and Dan were of the opinion that that should be changed because it's being opened up for bids and didn't need to be restricted to solar because that would limit the number of potential bidders.
But we had discussed as the board on the 4th. Should we have discussed that in an open meeting as a board on the 11th to have that change made instead of through an email change?
I don't think that you made that change until you acted on the 11th. There was never anything, I mean, I sat here and my recollection of the 4th was that you in fact asked me, or some of you asked me to read back what are the restrictions, and of my notes I went, A was pedestal mounted structures, I think, and I had a debate of whether to call them solar panels because that's what it's going to be or not. And then the others were the restrictions off of M2. So that discussion was had. That was what I understood everyone to agree to until Friday morning. I received an email asking me to change it, which I did and sent out, and I guess wasn't here on the 11th, but certainly had the ability to adopt either the first option or the second option. But I don't.
There was no vote.
There was no formal action on the floor.
So if I'd have called to say, hey, let's put other restrictions in there, you'd have added them into them? Because I decided that was
version with those same conditions.
with whatever I wanted to put in there.
I mean, ultimately, I'm drawing the legal documents for you. You are making the policy and making the decision as to how to implement it.
But we didn't have that.
I thought we decided that when we left as a group, but we were deciding not individually.
We ultimately decided as a group when we adopted.
But
That's what we adopted. And Mark, do you have the same opinion expressed to Andy at the same time along with Dan?
so to me, it would have been proper then to have turned the resolution down by leaving it as we had agreed it should be brought forward, not individuals going in and requesting that be taken off.
It wasn't
agreed to. It was a draft. Andy prepared a draft
We-
resolution.
In the meeting, we all said, and the braid pet and everyone, yeah.
I didn't, not, when I found
And when he
out,
read them back, nobody made an objection.
There was a lot of discussion that day.
Well,
That's right.
but he
And
What
said,
was put into the original draft, I did not anticipate.
like he said, when he left, his instructions were, that's kind of where we left it as a group. And then individually, it got changed somewhere between then and that day. So if we would have wanted to leave it as it was, vote it down, rework it, bring it back, that would have been fine. But I feel like I was excluded in people making decisions about that resolution that then was brought forward, which is tough to back out of something once it's laying on the table.
it's not hard to back out of it. We don't have to approve it. We have a vote yes or no, Mark. And I'll clarify this. When I told Andy, says, when I saw the parcel A, B, C, and D, we had no map of A, B, C, and D.
Yeah, we did.
I did. I sent you a
Not it.
map with the
That
original.
portion of it we could see.
No, we all had a map.
And so I told Andy, I did not agree to I thought A was the far end, but closest to the other end. So I was not in agreement with that. And so that's why we brought a draft in and approved a draft.
Who's we?
He produced a draft and then we
Based
looked at
on-
that
Not based on what we decided at that meeting previously, but he read back to us and nobody objected to
And
it.
I talked with Andy.
In the meeting.
Andy, no, this is after the fact. As he was doing the draft, he gave us a draft for review and I gave him my comments back. Mark had the same feeling. That was not the restrictions that he understood. That we
But I
were agreeing.
contacted Andy after
That's
I
right.
saw yours and said, what happened to the language on property A, on parcel A? So why did your change get made and not mine? That was
That's why-
in the draft of the resolution we talked about on December 4th is what Andy sent to us, is what we all talked about and agreed to that day. That on Saturday morning, I saw the new draft without parcel A in there. And I emailed Andy back and said, what happened to the draft on parcel A, the restriction on parcel A?
And did we?
To which he
discuss-
said, I heard from Kel say that shouldn't have been in there. And I'm like, that should be in an open meeting. We can talk about it Monday.
And we did, didn't we?
openly.
Did we talk about it?
It was
Monday,
already
Shirley?
changed on the
It was
draft.
already changed.
That was a draft
It was a draft.
that we had not approved.
But the draft should have been what we left the meeting with the understanding of as a group.
And then talk about
And
changing
then
on
make
the following
changes.
Monday.
Which is what we
Following
did
month.
when we approved it, Mark. We had a document that Andy approved, that we gave Andy.
That we didn't give Andy. We gave him instructions to create a document with our understanding that nobody objected to when we left that meeting.
And then we had a document that we reviewed on that Monday that we approved, didn't we?
Let me last
I didn't
Monday,
approve it.
Yeah.
I didn't approve it.
The three of us did.
Yeah, but it was
That's the
based
whole
upon
point.
the changes that three people decided to make
That's all. that it
outside
needed.
of our meeting.
And so it passed by a majority vote. Is that
Well,
correct?
It did, but it should have been what we thought the understanding was. Then we could have voted it down, publicly decided what it was gonna be, so people could hear what it was gonna come down as again.
We approved it the way that the majority of us.
But that
Agreed.
wasn't the understanding when we left the majority.
It
The
was that
majority
day.
on Monday agreed to what Andy read aloud at the end of the meeting. We
That's
agreed to
correct.
that on December 4th. And if there were any changes to be made, it should be done transparently at the next open meeting. You could have still voted it down. Of course you would have, obviously. But the fact remains it wasn't done in an open meeting transparently. It was changed through an email between you and Andy with input from Dan. That's not the board having an open meeting.
And Mark, obviously, he said was in on it too, so.
Mark agreed that was not what we felt should be.
So the
in.
three of you talked about the fact that you
And
didn't
we
agree.
presented a document that the board voted on.
Did the three of you talk that week about the fact that you didn't agree with parcel A? That's what you
No.
just said.
You
No,
said
I
that.
did not say that.
You
said
said that
Mark
Mark
agreed.
agreed and that Dan agreed.
Andy just told me that Dan agreed.
No,
I did have a
No.
phone conversation with.
We had a conversation, two of us had a conversation.
and then how did you know that Mark agreed?
Mark had talked to me and we had
When?
But prior to that, Mark had said he saw the same thing, that the language that you had inserted into this was not what he agreed to.
The language that we all agreed that day, and it's on video.
We didn't make
But he
objection
read it
to when you
aloud.
read it.
Yeah, I know it did. I did.
Was anything legally done wrong here, Andy?
No, I mean, you didn't have a vote on the 4th. On the 11th, you had the first draft of the resolution that you could have presented. You had the second draft of the resolution, which apparently was presented. You took a vote on it, and that's where it stands. Unless the three of you were in communication and meeting together to discuss this, we don't have a problem on the
No.
open meetings.
No.
But how did you know that Mark was also in agreement that parcel A shouldn't have had that restriction on it and to change it before the December
I,
11th meeting?
he called me on something and
We had a conversation. I sent a note back to Andy.
I just said, I didn't agree on what this, that's all I said.
Right, so you had a conversation about that, you had a conversation about that, so you
That's
knew the
correct.
three of you agreed before December 11th that you didn't want that
Well, I
parcel
I
A.
didn't
No.
talk to Dan about it. I just talked to Steve about it.
Mhm.
I had no discussion about this whatsoever. When I had a conversation with Steve, I acknowledged to him that that's not exactly the way I thought we agreed on either. And if he wanted to translate that to Andy on my behalf, that would be fine. And Andy could call me if he had any questions.
It's interesting because a lot of the conversation was raised pedestals, and that was, quite a bit of it was about that. So to not have the understanding when he said raised pedestals, that, oh, that wasn't my understanding. It seemed.
I gave my
obvious that it
opinion
was.
what I wanted. I gave the restrictions on MT zoning. That's what my opinion was. That's where I was at.
And this was on the flood. The restrictions were related to the pedestals not impeding the area marked as flood zone on Beacon. That was a major part of our conversation, Mark, because there was no problem. And I brought it up specifically that Tony Phillips had said that a pedestal mounted facility inside of those flood prone marked areas on Beacon was acceptable by our ordinances. And we talked about the ordinances and their impact on M2. That was all a part of our discussion.
we talked about the fact, and it's in video, that the reality compared to the flood zone mapping do not match. And that parcel A was to have the restriction of raised pedestals to not impede the flow of water, to still be able to plant prairie plantings. That was part of the discussion.
And part of that discussion was related to, we do not have ordinances in our zoning for M2 that cause a structure in M2 to be mounted on pedestals unless it falls within the floodplain aspect of it. And that was part of what you and I just had a conversation over across the desk on that day, Shirley.
No, and we also had a discussion saying that M2 further restrictions, we can be more restrictive. We've talked about it twice in that meeting.
We talked about those things which were put
That's
in
why
there.
that's why we put that further restriction on
Good, now
parcel
you-
A. To have, that restriction
You
from
have some-
parcel
Yeah.
A.
Open mic on that. That's not acceptable.
Carl, turn your mic off, please. So twice during that, or at least twice during that video, you'll find us talking about the fact that the floodplain does not match the reality of the flooding in 2016. And that's why at the end of that meeting, when Andy read aloud the restrictions, he included raised pedestal or similar structures so it wouldn't impede the flow of water over that row crop like it did in 2016. That was, and he said aloud what he was going to add to that resolution. And so we got the first resolution back earlier that week that included that restriction on parcel A. And then on Saturday morning, when I read my email and saw the new resolution printed up, it was not included on parcel A. So I was like, what happened? How did this get changed again? Because we just talked about an open meeting on December 4th. If it needed to be changed again, that's an open meeting discussion for December 11th. But now the resolution we're looking at was not what we asked Andy to draw up on the 4th of December. So I'm just saying, why don't we have that discussion in an open meeting on Monday?
Andy, am I misunderstanding something? You brought and presented a draft resolution to the board, which we examined and voted upon.
You had a draft resolution and I sent, I believe, a map of parcel A, B, C, and D prior to the 4th. My recollection is, and the video is much better than my recollection, there was conversation on the 4th about parcel A being in the floodplain. Parcel A was planted down with prairie grass. And if we put pedestal mounted solar there, that would not increase the risk of damage from flooding. And that was why parcel A was different than B, C, and D. So I drafted the resolution based on that conversation on the 4th and the feedback I had from, I thought, all 5 of you at that time, and sent that out on, I think it was Wednesday or Thursday following. And then Friday was told that that was not the agreement. So that is where you have 2 resolutions on the 11th to choose from.
We had one resolution on Monday, the 11th, that we're looking at, the latest edited one from Friday or Saturday when it was sent out. And I got a hold of you, I think Saturday, saying what happened here. I don't understand why the further restriction on parcel A that we all agreed to around the table, or all talked about around the table and asked you to include, was in that first one.
First resolution would have never been adopted.
Oh, I know that. That's very, very clear.
So here
That's
we
very
are.
clear.
The second was.
But that's why we should have had that conversation on December 11th. When I brought it up again, and it was clear that day too, that you're not going to vote for anything with the further restriction on. We're just going to stick to the M2 restrictions that we had in Baltimore and Holland. We didn't even add asphalt, which I asked for, in addition to the restriction for solar panels or raised pedestal construction. So it's I'm not doubting that you wouldn't have voted for it with it on there. That's clear that you wouldn't have.
So
In fact, what I'm saying is we should have had that first resolution to be looking at, because that's what was sent out after the December 4 open meeting. I think it's a little bit sneaky and not being completely transparent with your public.
I disagree with you, Shirley, and
I know you.
you and I disagree often. That's true.
let's move on.
I would just say, I would have to agree with Shirley. It's like I thought we all had an understanding, we got it back, and it's like, that's what should have been brought forward, because that's what was talked about in the public meeting. Otherwise, anybody could call and say, hey, throw this in there, throw this in there, and it would just be right up to the last minute who had the last one thrown in there, so to speak.
Now, we all had an opportunity to vote on a resolution in writing in front of us that we voted on that day, Mark.
But we didn't have the opportunity to vote on the other one that he said we should have been
We
presented
didn't.
with.
There was a draft. We voted on the resolution. I have a question for Andy. Andy, do you have an opportunity to look at that ADA issue over the seat request from the
I
road
communicated
department?
with Nick about that.
I'm sure you saw we have a public records request.
Yeah, I think it's as to the three of you. I think we handled it the way we have in the past, and why don't you run them through me? If you've got anything, text messages, emails, whatever else,
Emails, texts, and voicemails.
send them on to me, and I will get them out to the person making the request.
I do not have it.
I got it.
I don't think I have anything other than the public information that we've had. I'll check and see if I had any handwritten notes that I may have had.
If I find something.
Get it to you through the next few days.
Well, and I would have the email from you on a week ago. Yeah.
Well,
Other than the things that I send to the whole board,
I didn't know if you had something from Rotocast requesting.
No.
Put on the agenda or not.
the next little situation we got here is with the Board of Health. We guided someone to it last week. The person that was in the position on the Board of Health did not know they had to fill out an application because there was a mix-up at the time.
He was in middle term appointed as, and he thought it was a 3-year term from that point, so he still would have had another 1.5 years left in his term.
Instead of just finishing out.
Yeah, instead of just finishing it out, and he had no idea. He had to rerun, put his application, he thought he was still in.
And Krista understood that because she didn't notify him that his term was up.
Yeah, he had no idea that his term was even up.
So two people thought it was starting over with a fresh term, evidently.
and so I presented the board, I should have given it to the Board of Health for review first, but the only applicant we had is the one, it was a new person, whereas the one that was on there didn't submit an application because he didn't know his term was up. So I presented that, they appointed him as the only applicant. And now the person who was on there, now that they know that their term was up, has submitted an application, wants to be considered to fill his term or fill a new term.
And the Board of Health adopted a policy evidently a year ago. You were.
Yeah, we got,
That they need to review everyone.
we got the animal vet or whatever covered, we got hospital, Luther College, Board of Supervisors, and then we need a school board or somebody on the school board to represent the school districts.
But the Board of Health evidently feels they need to vet everybody, so we should have run it through them before we.
Yeah, we usually go over the application.
I'm new to the board. I had no idea that was out there. Nobody told me that we needed to do that, so procedure.
And I've acknowledged that I should have been the one to send the application. That probably would have at least triggered Krista to know that why are we getting an application? Because there wasn't someone else up and Bob, and it might have prevented all this, but anyway.
Wants to talk about it, please. Mr. Langren, can I request make a comment? So I'm the individual that got appointed. I'm sure you're aware. So my issue is there's confusions on the date, but in your public minutes from that meeting where Mr. Cronin was appointed to the Board of Health, it said for the remainder of the term for Mr. Lane. It says that in the public minutes that are on the Board of Supervisors page. In addition, I would also like to add from your conversation, I understand that since, this has all happened, that Mr. Cronin has submitted an application, But from my understanding, that was after the public deadline that was published both on Decorum News and in the paper. So there was a public deadline that I had applied by, and Mr. Cronin had submitted his application after that deadline. And from my previous conversation with you this morning, I said, I'm not opposed because I feel like he should be on. I stated that publicly, but it's just frustrating because I followed due process to the extent that was my knowledge base. Also, I would like to say for the public record as well, when this does go to vote, Mr. Vick has not mentioned this yet, but he told me this at the Board of Health meeting last week, as well as the other 4 Board of Health members that were there, that he would be abstaining from this vote.
And I didn't realize I could. I thought maybe I'd have to abstain because of it, but I don't have to.
Okay, but he told me and the 4 other, because I was a public spectator, and then the 4 other people that were there actually on the board, he stated that. So I would like that on the record as well.
I thought I had to until I asked Ben about it. Do I have to abstain or not?
Which I understand, but you also stated that to me and 4 other people in the room.
I know.
But you're gonna take that back.
Can we clean this up and make it right by rescinding our motion for that appointment and then scheduling a new application deadline and have people interested apply? And then that goes to the Board of Health, and then the Board of Health makes their recommendation.
Did you make the appointment last week?
Yes.
So we're within 1 week, and someone who voted in favor of it can make a motion to rescind the appointment. It needs to be voted on, and you could follow the process that Sherwood's talking about.
I'd recommend that. That's what we do.
I would move to rescind our appointment of last week because of the miscommunication and misunderstanding. I think it's all innocent. And I would like to make the motion to rescind our vote of last week for the appointment to the Board of Health.
I'll second that.
Who made the motion last?
Anyone that voted for it.
Anyone who voted for it can reconsider it. So it was unanimous last week, so.
We have a motion and a second to rescind the Board of Health appointment from last week.
You made the motion.
I made the motion. And then the discussion part of this, I'd like to offer apologies to you for this mix-up, Christopher. And I hope that you will express interest in our boards in the future, especially Board of Health with your background. But I apologize that this happened.
Appreciate that.
And that if we're opening up applications, that you feel free to apply. Which just sounds like that's the procedure, then we'll.
Yes.
Open
We'll start it
I
on
think,
the
do we
date.
need another motion on that?
We'll do that separately from this, because this is.
So this is just to rescind our appointment.
Just to rescind it. All those in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye. And I will rescind because I don't want to get targeted.
So you're going to abstain.
Abstain.
All right. Motion passes. Now should we set a new date?
Yeah, should we have it be so that you can address this on January 2nd? Otherwise you'll be, I think they'll be short a person at their first meeting in January.
Because we'll meet we'll meet
So-
the ninth.
So we'll post this then
Yeah,
publicly, is that how that
I
works?
can put it in I'll send out a press release with what I did last time, and I made a paid public notice in the newspaper.
Would you notify the 2 previous applicants individually?
I can,
I think that would be wise.
Christopher should know already.
No, I'm just-
Do we need a motion?
I would motion to set the new date of January 2nd. Applications due.
Let's have them do the
First.
the Friday before so that we can have them for the 2nd,
Which
which
is,
is,
The 29th.
Are you going to send it to Board of Health?
yes,
then they'll look at them before our meeting.
yes, we'll have to. So they will be short a person for their first meeting.
Yeah, first meeting we will be. Yeah.
All right, do we have a second on that?
Second.
29th, you said, 29th, with appointment on the 2nd. Or no, with forwarding it to the Board of Health and then appointment after they've reviewed it.
All right, you want to just read that?
To open application period again with the applications due the 29th. I'll forward them to the Board of Health and you can make an appointment after their review.
Are you okay with that? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
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 I was saying that one too, I don't want to get
Steve?
target on my back.
All right, you have that one taken care of. Anything else for us, Andy?
I think I've eaten in Michael's time far enough.
Andy, thank you for your patience with all of us.
All right,
Go through the evaluation yet or not?
we'll do that one right after.
After Michael.
Michael,
Good.
so you got everything figured out one weekend?
Hardly, but well, you only got one page or two filled out, so you, yeah.
Yeah, well, this is my note, page, and I talked to Jeff about what's going on.
You already got a conference under your belt.
Yeah, well, I was told that that was a good conference to go to, so thanks for,
How was that then?
I met,
See,
I don't know, 99 county engineers, but almost all 99 county engineers and sort of the work network and names and faces and mannerisms. What is it you go through it? It was a fantastic experience.
Kind of time just right then, you got.
Well, yeah,
I
didn't know
wrote
that.
that really, but maybe, or, yeah, just.
Well, I was told I could start in January or whatever. I said, I'll just get started. So it was good that I went. So it was
Good.
very good that I went.
Good for you.
So thank you.
Thank you for going.
Yeah. I'm not sure exactly how this goes.
Just go ahead and give it.
First, this is my first, solo shot. I was last week with Nick. Basically, 360th Street, the appeal. We're proceeding with that. Figuring out what we take and what we leave and things like that, and that's kind of been discussed with Mr. Peel in an email from Nick to him. Nick copied all of you guys on that.
Yeah.
So you guys should see that. Everything seems to be going, according to Jeff, everything seems to be going good in the shops. And they're continuing brush cutting throughout he showed me the brush cutting last week up on the north part of the
Yeah,
county.
and they're right up.
So
Top of the hill, that's good.
I had a meet and greet with Jeff on Tuesday morning, so that happened. Met a lot of the guys. I can't remember all their names, but
That would be a real trick.
If you could
Yeah.
manage that in one meeting.
that right. So we did that. Not a whole lot there. Dana told me that she's got the speed signs for Frankville and Freeport
great.
are ordered.
Great.
And they'll arrive in late January. So that's all I have to report to you. I'm gonna work with Nick. We're spend on the budget. We have a meeting this week, Thursday, 1 to 4. And that
was the W14 project.
talking about Spillville.
Yeah. I mean, the whole project. is
Letting it
getting
in.
Letting it there, letting it out, or bidding it and stuff.
What about that?
How is that coming as far as getting that left?
I talked to Mike Wise this morning, because I don't have a good context of the project.
Yeah.
Don't hold me to anything here.
No.
But I talked to him about that project, and the state hasn't got back with their findings yet.
Okay.
So we have to wait until
Oh, they get-
they get their stuff, and then I talked to him, he thinks that the letting might be well, it's already April set up. I think it'll be 2 months later. Just, again, my understanding of exactly that project is not 100%, but just, we know that on that project, we're trying to get more information. Yeah, that's all I can say to that.
No,
That's fine.
So we may have a 2-month holdup is what Mike is thinking. It's possible.
It's possible, and it is, April was what I saw on the, just on the document, so maybe he has something in March. I don't know.
Have you signed off on the design already?
I have not signed off on the
Oh,
design.
so once you sign off on the design, then it's 12 months, or excuse me, 12 weeks with the DOT before they can let it out for bid,
So
normally.
so yeah, and I'm gonna look at that as soon as I can, but they're
When
gonna
you're
find,
comfortable putting your name on it.
yeah, sure. But a lot of the issue right now is, we need to get the state's findings back. on that.
Yeah, before you can.
So.
Yeah.
As soon as they do that, I'm gonna do more than just brief myself over the, 5-10 minute
It's like
conversation.
NEPA or whatever, environmental and cultural things that have to all be
Lisa's
signed
gone
up.
through, and then SHPO is next in the process, and I think that's what, we're somewhere in that.
Somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, right
Vicinity
there. So,
Yeah, if you can, keep me in the loop because both, all Fort, Spillville and Ridgeway all
We're in the district.
noted, because.
go after, come to me looking for answers. And I was going to.
Yeah, no.
Informed, but I just have to know, I kind
Right.
of don't know my place a little
No,
bit.
all of those city councils all have great interest in.
If you got an insider, take advantage of it.
So Mr. Peel, getting back to that, has until the 20th, which is this Wednesday,
Yes.
to move that rock. What's plan B?
We're moving forward thinking that we are going to remove it
And then bill him?
and then bill him, yes.
What'll happen with the product? Is that
Well,
his
that
product?
is his rock. I talked to Andy about that today. That's his rock. We can't really do anything with the rock, if you want, I mean, it doesn't make sense for us to haul it all the way over to,
Where do you put it?
well, one of our maintenance sheds. I'm not sure which one. And then it's his rock and then have him pick it, like, it doesn't make any sense. So what we would do is try to find a stockpile on his property,
Put it there.
put it there and say, and then the other thing we might end up billing him for is, to, grade it smooth, after some backfill.
And all the labor, I would hope.
Absolutely, absolutely the labor, but, I don't know that process that's gonna be working with Andy if it gets to that point. We're all praying that Mr. Peel, does the necessary thing here and that he starts acting, give us some sign that he's gonna act on removing the product, so.
So if he has somebody in there that's actively starting to move it by the 20th, we're gonna give him a little bit of grace
I
perhaps.
mean, if somebody with a shovel, I don't think so. I mean,
If it's a power shovel.
Yeah.
And
we're gonna need some
truck,
equipment, something.
yeah, if there's something.
Similar to the equipment to put it in.
Yes, so, yeah.
I think the last thing your cruiser wants to do is go out there and
Yeah.
remove his
Me too.
riprap.
Yeah, so that's, we talked about the equipment that we would take there and things like that.
Yeah.
So,
When the board hired you, they said that they would meet with you bi-weekly or semi-monthly, however you want to say it. Anyway, do you want to set up who the first couple and do you want to meet with them yet or before the end of this month? Or is it with the holidays, maybe you want to just skip that and put it in the first week of January?
Kinda.
Unless Michael has a comment on that. I just don't want to forget that was part of the,
that was part of the, yes. And I sent an email this morning. I was trying to send it this, over the weekend, but, my fob didn't work and was a little clumsy with the keys to try to send it out this weekend, but that was kind of the point of that email, to remind everyone that I'm still looking forward to working with all of you. So,
Should we set it up for like the Wednesday or somebody the Wednesday after, the Tuesday afternoon, or right after the meeting, the second
Right
or
after the
something?
meeting on the 2nd.
Second, some people want to
And
do
who the
that.
first two want to be.
yeah, I'm gonna let the board decide that, and if Ben wants to be part of that too.
I can meet with you most anytime, especially if it comes to budget or procedural questions. I don't want
Yeah,
to
if he's
meet
gonna work
with
on the
you, talk.
budget, let him get kind of work
Well,
on the budget.
that won't really start in earnest until Thursday this week.
Yeah,
So-
but I mean, yeah, he could kind of get through the budget, and maybe that.
Should we wait a month before we get?
Doesn't make any difference to me.
Shirley and I will meet with you on the second, then that's fine.
After the
If it
meeting.
works with you after the meeting. Yeah.
So just right after this meeting on Monday.
Okay. It's actually a Tuesday, because
And if you need anything,
Right.
first.
Sure, but
if you
Yeah.
need anything in the meantime, just don't hesitate to give me a call.
sure that.
I'll try to meet with you maybe before Thursday at some point, just to talk about, because what Nick does in Howard County might be different than what we
It is
do.
different.
Yeah, and so we can talk about what needs to be looked at, the way you need to look at it. Because I think, yes, I think they use different forms there than what we use here. I've always taken the DOT forms that the engineer provided, and after the board's looked at it, then put it onto the forms I need, whereas I think in Howard County, then the auditor requires Nick to put it directly onto the county forms, and then he puts it on the DOT form later. So it's like backwards.
It's a little backwards.
Yeah.
That's all gonna be explained to me, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so we can go through all of it.
either by you or by process, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll have a few less dollars put in there this year,
It probably will be a few less dollars,
probably about $10,000, I think.
because the
Next year.
value, the
6,
amount we
8%.
can legally transfer, the maximum we can transfer is based on our valuation. And our rural valuation actually went down this year.
0.68%.
Yeah, so you're gonna get a little bit less money out of the board of supervisors transfer.
Take 890 some million times 0.68% is $10,000.
What's their,
like that?
what's the state's valuation based on?
How much?
Just the percentage you're
Six.
using, or how they assess it? Is it property value or?
You're talking about the
63.
rollback, how they come up with those numbers. I can talk about that some more. We don't need to bore Michael with
Given
that.
the fact that
Yeah.
land prices it's hit an all-time high,
Yeah.
it seems odd that the valuation
We
should
should
go
go
down.
down, yeah. Yeah, I couldn't believe that either, yeah. She just rattled it off this morning, 11,000, $300 or $800 an acre is the average. Radio and heard
Up in our 8% this year, I think.
3.5.
Okay, yeah.
I don't understand that then.
Yeah.
I'll explain
It
here.
slowed down.
Oh, great.
Slow it down. some.
I'll look forward to that explanation.
Yeah.
It's in that cycle now. They said we're slow down and then go back up again.
Do you have any questions for us today?
Right now I don't. Mostly my questions are, the day-to-day stuff, trying to make sure that I'm doing what my staff is expecting me to. Question I might have for you, we're gonna do one-on-one with you, expect me to do, I think, more so.
Yeah.
So that, and then, there's some stuff, the emergency responder stuff to fill in, I think still, it's, anyway.
How are you feeling after the first week then, kind of?
I mean, going to the conference was really, it was really good to start off with that. So I think it's a real good start, good first step for sure.
Be swallowing the fire hose.
Yeah, it's,
Or lucky we don't have snow, so that little blessing keeps.
well, I've got a meeting with Jeff on what my exact expectations are on the snow removal. So that is an issue that I think Daniel put on my desk, and I said, Jeff, we need to address this. So
That sounds like we should slide by through Christmas now.
that's what I saw last night on the weather, but
Yeah, who knows, that changed.
No extra holiday pay.
Yeah, that's what the guy said, open stove to get some extra holiday pay.
And I don't think those
Pretty
guys.
swift.
Yeah, yeah.
You want to read before you go?
I'm gonna pass,
Okay.
so,
These are from the insurance company and these are from the architect firm, so they're providing.
Yes.
These are wraps you can take.
We don't have these at every meeting.
Yeah.
Good thing.
That's our $90,000 in cookies there.
$90,000. Man,
That's all
Not what
it's
it's
going
gonna be, yeah.
yeah.
That's the increase.
That's,
Yeah.
yeah, there could be another
premiums.
one by the end of the year.
30%.
Companies are.
It sounds like we're fortunate to have a good staff to get you trained in.
I got a lot of compliments on the staff.
Or putting things on your desk.
Well, it was
Which is
one of-
great.
One of the things they put on my desk was the ordinance for the snow removal, and that's why I started asking questions. So excellent, and kudos to them.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
Thank Thank you.
all.
Thanks.
Great.
And thanks again for doing it all.
Have a Merry Christmas, Michael.
You too. Everyone.
Been quite a year.
Indeed, indeed.
I will say on your insurance comment, we're Bushman Insurance, which is Community Insurance of Iowa, is one of the only agents that for ICAP that will sell insurance. ICAP is our insurance company. It will sell insurance based on a flat rate commission versus a percentage commission. So even if the rates go up a lot, they're flat rate. So what we pay them,
$1,000, isn't it?
yeah. So what we pay them doesn't change just because the rates go up, and whereas, which is why we've stayed with them for so long, is because every other agent charges us a
Percentage commission.
commission percentage. So whenever there's an increase in rates, then
Their rates go, yeah.
So they wouldn't have had to bring that.
no, they wouldn't have had to. We are, unless they're gonna ask you for an increase in their flat rate. So.
Please.
What's the insurance for?
We're talking about property and
Okay.
liability insurance.
Yeah.
Yep, yep.
And that's just a US wide.
And my understanding is that ICAP won't allow any new agents to even sell it that way, but they're kind of grandfathered in. So they continue to do that.
Yeah.
They bring, last year, I think if you took the standard commission percentage that ICAP has figured in, it was around 18,000, but they charge you a flat rate of 12,000. So they're saving you that right there before the increase in rates.
A lot of the things were not updated.
Yeah.
Was that last year, the year before already? I went through all the vehicles and assessed the values to them. So all that's relatively done, relatively,
Better than it was.
Yeah.
I mean, some of that was going back many, many years where nothing was done, but we've got that kind of squared away.
Some buildings were insured twice. Some weren't insured.
That's, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do with this.
No, this was more information for them, but you'll get the standard procedure is in mid-spring. You'll get a list that Lynn will forward from our agent that says, here's what's on our insurance schedule. So let us know if there's any buildings that are misvalued or any vehicles that need to be removed or new ones that need to be added. So that,
all all equipment, buildings,
Somebody just
vehicle,
sent the
all
list of the.
all the roads, all your road stuff.
yeah, and she'll just send it out to each department and ask for updates, and that has gotten behind enough that we had missing equipment, missing buildings, and equipment that was valued way more than it was worth. And
Paying
things.
for buildings that we didn't have to insure.
Yeah.
You need to insure.
But on another different insurance note, the IMWCA rates can be affected in a positive way with further safety training and whatnot. So don't let that slip either with your crews.
So that is worker comp.
Okay.
Yeah, we have 3 different insurance things we talk about. We have the work comp insurance, property and liability insurance, and then the health insurance.
So
But you can positively affect the workers' comp end of it with essential training, further training.
And we'll drag you into that. Our next safety
Yeah.
meeting isn't until January
I'm gonna have
15th.
to rely on you guys to give me like,
Yeah.
guys and years on a little bit of that.
Oh,
And
yeah.
there's a contact, Scott Smith, isn't it Smith?
Scott Smith from.
Scott Smith can help us on that too.
As long as we're on that safety, whoever is on there, now they brought it up to health board, we signed a HEP deal in the place where the home health care aides go into a home. The pets have to be locked in a room
Separate.
separately, so I don't know
That's
if
a good
that'll help.
I don't know if we.
Because they've had a couple incidents where
We had that to the
they say the
safety
dog's good and friendly till you touch the applicant, and then we're going to.
So anyway, we'll drag you in on the safety committee. Usually have either the engineer or someone from your department assigned to the safety committee. So we'll ask for someone, but that's not till January 15th. So go ahead and get a couple more weeks under your belt before we work.
Anymore.
Yeah.
just curiosity, so like when we put up a new salt shed, Does somebody make note of that for insurance purposes, or is it just?
That's one of these updates that we'll have to be sure that
Everything's in.
everything's updated, and I don't keep track of when the building is built and when we need to get it updated, but that's why we do the annual rechecks.
Because those were two of them this year, I think we did
And
last year.
like was, this is the thumbnail. If you're not familiar with work comp has job classifications and a board rate that is fixed for that type of work that's being done. If you have a good safety record and have low claims, there is a modifier that will modify either up or down based on your overall safety. In Winneshiek County, we've been very good and rank very high statewide and have a lower, in other words, instead of paying 1 times the board rate, we pay, I think it's 68.
Something like that.
They're called a mod rate.
It's a mod rate. And so we pay less than that board rate, which saves us a considerable amount of money. And if our safety record is good and so forth, then our mod rate can even go a little bit lower. There's kind of a floor where it doesn't go below, but you can go above, and there's some that get up in the range of 2. Consider that as doubling the cost of your workers' compensation. And so that's why safety, you're getting rewarded for good safety and you're not having to visit the hospital to see your people.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, well, we usually involve the road department, the conservation department and the health department, because those are the 3 that
And
and that have the most
Liability or.
the most situations where they
Exposure.
could have safety
Sure.
issues. So I'm on the committee, but sitting in my office, if I,
Paper cuts are,
Yeah.
they may be
Yeah.
painful, but they're
not nearly as,
not terminal.
yeah.
All right, so there was a little bit of a discussion of that at the,
Conference.
that conference on Wednesday, so that was.
Good.
A little bit of insight on that.
Mhm.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas. Happy
Yeah.
holidays.
You bet.
Well, let's go back up to the valuation.
You want to do this? Did we do this thing on the, no, we haven't done that. The appointment to NERG.
I would move to appoint
Oh.
Mark Vick to what's it called?
North Iowa Response Group, NERG.
Iowa Response Group, the NERD group,
Yeah, with Sean as an alternate.
with Sean as an alternate in the motion.
Is there a second?
Either Mark or I, makes me difficult.
So it's ever.
I have a motion and second. All those in favor, say aye.
I,
Aye. Those opposed, motion carries unanimous. Now we'll do the valuation.
Okay, valuation report. So the question you asked is why does the state so the state takes the total value increase statewide in each category. So for example, agricultural value increase. So they take all of it statewide and they limit it to a maximum of 3% growth statewide. So they say, okay, if it's worth whatever billions statewide, we're only going to let it go up 3%. So we need to roll it back this amount to keep on that 3%. So how that affects each county depends on their specific valuation compared to the statewide total. So obviously, we've had less ag growth than the statewide amount because when they rolled that back, ours ended up below what it was last year.
Okay.
And so they do that for ag and for residential and for commercial, all separately within their separate limits. And residential and ag are tied together. So they're both limited 3%, but they're also limited to the max of the other one. So if for some reason residential only goes up 2.5% statewide, then ag can only go up 2.5% statewide or whatever. They're tied together as well as this 3% limit. So those rollbacks, they're technically called assessment limitations, but locally, everyone just calls them rollbacks, are assigned as it's a statewide, basically equalization or capping of the statewide valuations. And so that's where those come from. And so we get the short end of it this time. And basically what that does is part of the reason they limit it is so that people don't see the fluctuation. The values themselves go like this as productivity, whereas the taxable value is on this just steady line that's, so when they're going like this, we're just on this steady increase so that because ag valuations are based on ag productivity, and so you get a bad year, values go way down, we don't lose a whole bunch of value, and then the next year, but values maybe come back up and we don't gain a whole bunch. Instead, they keep us in this where it can't change more than 3%.
Yeah.
Either side.
It's like commodities are figured in there, land value.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just 5 or 6
the
different.
profitability of farm, or the
Yeah.
profitability is one.
Yeah.
big-
So yeah, I think it takes in both productivity, like average bushels per acre, as well as the price per bushel are both factors.
Then the cost of,
The cost of
The
input,
profitability.
yeah.
profitability per acre.
Fuel cost, all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's
It's all figured in there. And so then they just put that all together on as a statewide mass group and try to limit it so it doesn't bounce around nearly as much as the actual prices do. Same in the housing and residential, it's gonna be the same way where house prices can go up and down a lot. And so the assessed values are supposed to reflect market value, but we want our taxable value to stay pretty steady. So they always limit it so it can't go up or down more than 3%.
All right, so then we need a motion to approve the valuation report.
I'd move to approve the valuation report.
Second.
And you go with the wording I recommended in the email that it's much longer than just,
Yeah.
okay.
So we have a motion and a second to approve the valuation report. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous.
So then our road budget is based off of our rural
Yes.
Yeah, you get, there's a
percent of rural.
dollars and cents per thousand. The amount that comes out of the rural is in millions, whereas the amount that comes out of the general is a couple $100,000. It's not very much of it. So that part that comes out of the general will go up 93%, but that will not make up
No,
the 32% we lose from the
no.
rural.
3.00675
Yeah.
out of the rural fund, and it's 0.1.
Yeah.
0.16857, whatever,
So there'll be
amounts
less,
to just nothing.
So there will be a little bit less money and that you transfer from property tax money into the.
Be about $10,000 less. You take that 3.00675 times,
And it's weird. It's like $3 and
yeah.
3/8 of a cent or something. I mean, it's like these weird numbers, but yeah. And I don't know historically where those numbers came from, but I'll figure those and give them to Michael so that he knows exactly to the dollar how much money that he'll be getting.
If you add that up, I think it was like $10,000 less than the building.
Yeah, then if we go back to the valuation of 18, we're almost at the same number, aren't we?
No,
Or a little bit higher.
892, the rural,
Yeah, on the rural,
no, that's, last year was the
820.
highest we had.
892.
So you're still more than it was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But that, like you said, a few meetings ago, when you look at the purchasing power of each of those dollars, that's way different. I mean, it's not even comparison at that point.
The 2.4 is a tough nut on that.
Yeah.
Do you have any committee reports?
Help for me.
we got that, we got the details on that.
Got that one covered.
Anything you want to add to that, Mark?
Oh.
Our Hawk meeting was canceled for this month, so
Historic was canceled,
as was tradition.
as was tradition.
And I did mention in that email on the valuation report, I mean, a big chunk of it is those assessment limitations. But I'm sure there's a portion of that that you're feeling in those, that new house filings where military credits are now exemptions from value, and the homestead credits that for over 65 are just exemptions to value that just come off of the taxable value for those folks that qualify for those. Where they used to be, we would calculate the tax, including those values, and then we'd get part of the money from the state to pay it, and they would get a credit on their taxes. And it doesn't work that way anymore. Now we just lose that value because of this changes.
Where do you think?
The clawback is supposed to.
Yeah. Where do you think,
Something like that.
where do you think our numbers will be? Our total budget.
Our total budget, I mean, these have now set the total property
It'll be
tax
about $100,000 less than it was
Than it was last year.
in the rural. You'll still have a little growth in the general.
general.
But not enough to offset the loss in the rural.
We got about, I'd say, we got about $100,000 increase in them three. I think it's like 57,000 and 130 and
So
20
then
some.
the
So
good news is, and I talked with
yeah.
Mark about this over the weekend or late last
Friday-
week, yeah,
Friday I
before
called
the,
you
yeah.
about it. Yeah, just
Is the supplemental fund, general supplemental, is not under the same restrictions as the regular general and regular rural. And so you will be able to increase that levy if you need to. And that's why we're proposing that the new IT person goes through Sean's budget, which comes out of the supplemental.
supplemental.
And we'll also be doing a few things. I mean, we've transferred because supplemental doesn't have a levy limit. They just have restrictions on use of that money. And so we've transferred most anything we can to the supplemental budget already. But another strategy that I'm planning to implement is to take a portion of my salary and a portion of Lori's salary, because elections are allowed to be paid from supplemental. So we're going to pay a portion of our salaries from the supplemental budget, just so that that isn't further impacting our general fund. So, I mean, that's
So,
that would give you another, whatever, if you pay half of each of our salaries, they'll save you another 100,000, but that gives you then that money to spend on the other general fund.
90,000 of it eats up to 100,000 that increase right off the bat. I mean, their insurance takes care of it.
Well, insurance is also in supplemental, so the
Oh,
insurance,
okay,
yeah,
so then that, okay. Then
yeah,
that'll help.
so that helps too.
Yeah.
So supplemental is,
Big deal.
the restrictions are a lot of those things the restrictions you can use supplemental for are many things that you don't really have direct control for. So
Yeah.
the medical examiner, that he can get his paid out of supplemental, and the elections, obviously, I just said, but insurance, FICA, IPERS, health insurance, as well as our property and our workers' comp, all are paid out of supplemental. So if there's a rate increase, you don't have to come up with that out of your general fund. You can use that supplemental fund to do that. So
So are
that's,
we gonna have to raise for our health insurance or
That might be,
I'll put that on the agenda?
because we're,
well, yeah, we're gonna talk about that. I actually had an email with Brian Hinker. We're probably gonna just wait now till after Christmas.
Yeah.
We're gonna get together, look at our current rates, look at our balance, and see what we think how much we need to maintain.
About $200,000 off where we were, where we should be.
should be on.
Yeah, so if we
That's
need,
by the end of the year, so.
I'm guessing we'll probably be somewhere in the, $20-25 a month per employee area where we'll want to increase the insurance rate, but all that money goes into our side fund to help stabilize,
Stabilize
Yeah.
that.
That makes
Yeah.
sense.
since we don't have to have any in our actual premium we pay to Mark. So,
So still pay $1 a month.
yes, that part will still be $1 a month, yeah.
But can we afford to do that?
I can't say, is that
Because we're,
Yeah, well, it's supplemental, so you're gonna have to raise your supplemental tax rate There's no question of that. With the rate increase in property and liability insurance, the additional IT position that you're gonna fund through Sean's budget, those are all gonna have to come through supplemental. So you are likely gonna have to increase your supplemental levy rate.
But if we increase the deductible $100, is that gonna help? That would help on our end.
It would help some, but the
Not
times
enough.
not enough to probably make a difference.
Okay.
But
You'd have to do something more major.
Major to get.
Yes.
part of that may have to come out of, we're one of the rarities where we're for the cost of health insurance. We may have, that's a hard bullet, but that may have to be something that changes. It's not gonna be popular, but it's a realism.
But we can cover the increases by the supplemental levy.
Yes.
So that's,
At least there's an option for it.
Yeah. You aren't stuck. I mean, there are counties who are restricted and they're looking at layoffs rather than other cuts because they don't have any, they're restricted on their growth and so they have to take their levy rate down and they don't have places to come up with the money to afford things.
which is what we probably need to look at long term. And that's the discussion we probably should have sooner than later.
Unless Des Moines changes their ways, which I don't see.
I think that's a 5-year
It's a 4-year plan.
4-year plan annually, so we'll have to make decisions before 4 years.
Totally separate conversation. I'd like to thank John and Nancy. The women's restroom is painted and it looks so nice and bright and new. So that's a positive today.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Nancy.
Coordinated with you for your vanity yet?
No, but I've
I
got.
told her to have one. Why don't you just go talk to them about it?
If you're with me, I'll go take a look and make sure. I'm not gonna.
I'd be happy to. It's gonna have to be just the right width to fit in there. But yeah, that would really be great.
It might work.
And they're working on a new floor too. It's not in yet, but they're gonna do new floors.
Yeah, they did say they were looking at.
It looks really good so far.
I sent out the email about the raises, only to start discussing it. I'll need something by mid-January so I can get those numbers going. So you'll have to start thinking about how you want to address that.
We should put that on the agenda for.
Yeah.
Well, I figure it can be in budget discussion because I've been running that every week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with those,
Right, be that, I guess.
so with the raises, we have to think, we don't have to give people what they said. we should give them.
No,
No, it means.
that's a recommendation.
So you have 3 sets of people you're looking at. You're looking at your people that have a union contract. And so they're locked in at 2 3/4. You have the comp board raises recommended for the elected officials, which then affect the deputies that are based on percentage. So those you put in the budget at the full amount, and then you take action after the budget hearing to lower it if you want. And then you have the other employees that fall on the pay matrix. And so the only decision I need to prepare the budget is the one for the people on the pay matrix.
How are we held to the one recommended for the sheriff with legislation that affects that?
The legislation does not affect your action,
Only the comp board.
right?
Okay.
The legislation, the blue legislation that required that set up comparisons for the sheriff's salary was directed to the comp board,
Yeah.
not to the board of supervisors. If you decide to lower that later, that's within your authority and there's nothing
You
wrong.
lower them all the same percentage in that category.
So if we lower the sheriff, we have to lower all the others by that same?
Same thing.
Same
Percent of that, yeah.
50%.
Yeah.
Both, all.
Everybody's 50%.
Oh, the percentage would be 50.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the
Except for
other one else would get,
supervisors, yeah, we don't.
whether you do 100% or nothing, the supervisors is the same. But everyone else, that say you lower 50%, then we would all get 2.5% and the sheriff would get 5%.
Yep.
So that's the way that, those are tied together that way.
Moved to Ocala, Florida. Why? You know what a supervisor in Ocala, Florida is paid? It's horse country.
What do they get?
$180,000 a year.
They're overpaid.
There are supervisors in Iowa that get paid
Oh,
over
yeah.
$100,000
Yeah,
a
you
year.
get
So
Des Moines, they're 120.
134,000, I think, in Des Moines. The big three are really up there.
Their jobs are a little bit less or more involved in this
A
county.
little bit of 100. But yeah, Ocala, Florida, that was a friend of mine who lives there. You called me and told me what their salary was. It just
I really
absolutely
do think about
floors you.
those counties that have those extremely small populations. How they can
But
pay
big,
people.
but big assessments, or some of them,
I mean, it's,
if they happen to have.
even if they only have 3 supervisors, just their payroll, how they can make it with
Oh,
a
some
few
of them are-
thousand
What's
residents.
the smallest county is 3,500.
Adams County is just right around 4,000. 4,000 population, smallest county. The auditor there, Southwest, auditor there always says, smallest county, biggest problems. That's her motto. Because she's got problems all the time. And they're smallest county, so.
4,000 people.
You just think of like your fixed costs on budget costs to run a county, and it's like,
They still got roads.
yeah. But they're
Yeah, even those, the smallest auditor's offices still have
Still tax-
2.5 or 3, I mean, in the smallest county still have 2.5 or 3 people, because they're still paying all the bills and
Yeah.
payroll and everything. I mean, all that stuff's gotta happen,
It does.
and so here we
Well,
are.
then you get the, like, treasurer's office, you wouldn't be near as busy, or,
Probably not, but
you know,
yeah,
the population.
Recorder, you wouldn't be-
Recorder's office wouldn't be there,
You wouldn't have a whole team, right?
because there just ain't much to record. You got 4,000
Right.
people, you only got.
Yeah.
How many, 2,000 licenses and just.
Yeah.
I'll motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and second for adjournment. All those in favor say aye.
I.
We made it before noon.
I was gonna say, so we can make it by noon.
Did you just say I have a
Sure.
Maybe I'll say that.
Boy, people went hard on these.
Yay.
my staff was saying, well, you should just leave one of those boxes here, and I'm like, don't leave. When we get that.
Boy, there's 2 layers here.
Ah.
I'll take one home. That one.